because we're
Mhm.
talking about healing today.
Yes.
How did you heal? Because healing for me was heavy. Hell, people talk about it like, oh, go through the
Yeah.
healing and
Yeah.
ooh, like it's
Yeah.
roses and butterflies. But girl, healing
Yeah.
was almost like I got drugged through hell.
Hello there, and welcome to the Poison Honey podcast. You are about to experience one of the first episodes from our first season. This podcast began as a space for raw and honest conversation about life's most transformative experiences. These early episodes, while they were recorded with simpler production, capture the essence of what this podcast stands for. We stand for authentic discussions about subjects that often go unspoken. As we get ready to revamp this podcast and to give it its own channel, we are re releasing these episodes. With these episodes, we seek to lay the groundwork for what's coming next. We're building on this foundation as we prepare to return with our new season and enhanced production, which will be out in May 2025. For now, today's conversation dives into childhood trauma and the journey of healing. Let's begin. Welcome to the Poison Honey podcast, where we discuss the bitter truths of life with raw vulnerability, honesty, and a dash of humor. I am your host, the Monarch of Grey, artist and writer. So, season one of Poison Honey podcast will be discussing stories of vulnerability. I will be having different guests on the podcast that will share their personal stories of vulnerability with us. Today, the very special episode of Poison Honey podcast. It is special to me, not only because it is the first episode of Poison Honey podcast, but because one of my oldest and dearest friends is joining me on this episode, and we will be discussing our childhood, more specifically, our childhood traumas. So, yeah, childhood traumas, I think it's something that all of us at some level have experienced and are dealing with as adults. Childhood trauma can come from a place of neglect, abandonment, sexual abuse, emotional abuse, and physical abuse. But it can also be that we witness these types of abuse in the parents, siblings, or maybe other loved ones in our environments. And it can cause long lasting effects on our mental health, but sometimes it even cause physical health issues. So it is very important to recognize these childhood traumas and how they are affecting us as adults and stopping us from being functioning adults, just having us in self destructing patterns. So, this is exactly what I'm discussing with my dear friend Corliën today. At what point did we recognize hey, we're traumatized, and how did we then proceed to deal with that? How did we go through that healing process, and how did we come out of it? And in some ways, we say we are still in there, right? We're still continuously healing. Healing is not a linear process, but it's just you keep going through different levels of healing, and that is what we are going through and what we share with you in this episode. We hope that by sharing our stories with you, that we can inspire you to deal with your own traumatic experiences, that you learn in a way to recognize your own patterns for yourself, and if anything, just make you feel like you're not alone. We're all in a way putting on a mask and acting like everything is okay, but at the end of the day, it's not always okay. We are human beings. We have had experiences that were not pleasant, that left a mark on us, and we have to deal with it, all of us. So, without any further ado, here is the interview with Corliën. Enjoy. little bit of background on us. We know each other. We go way back
Way, way
from
back.
way back from teenage years. And I think what's so beautiful about our friendship is that we both evolved from kind of a very traumatized place, and we saw each other go through
Mhm.
different healing processes. I think we were still in the future have healing processes that we'll see each other go through because it's continuously doing so.
What
Sorry.
I find even more beautiful about our relationship, especially today, speaking about healing, is while we were going through our transitions and growth, at some point we lost each other. But that is one of the important things of healing. You can look at someone through their eyes and what they're going through and show compassion. And I think that is how one of the ways how we found each other back in our friendship. You know,
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. That's so cute. Oh my God. Anyway, so I have a few things that I want to talk about concerning trauma and healing. I will be asking you a bit about your own experience and with what we see around us, also with other people, and just what's living amongst us as humans. So, do you want to tell us a bit about your story of trauma to healing? Like, what were you experiencing, and what got you to that place of healing?
well, the funny thing about trauma is I had traumas I didn't even know were traumas until I started healing, but they kept showing up. One of the traumas I lived with without knowing was my parents divorced when I was 6. I never understood that. And then they got married again. That was something that stuck with me because I couldn't understand relationships and love in itself. And it seemed also confusing to me how people go from loving each other so much to divorcing and getting married again. And as divorce does, it affected me as a small child so much that I carried it with me in life. And I saw that in my relationships and how I came to healing. I just felt like I needed it. Otherwise, I would have been stuck. It wasn't like I knew that, oh my God, I need to heal. But just somewhere in life, I didn't feel like I had a choice. It was, do you want to continue doing this? Do you want to be like this? Do you want to react like this? I just sat with myself and said, okay, I want to change this and that about me. And some things were easier, for example, I wanted to lose weight, I lost weight. Those were the physical things. And when I was done with the physical things, I still wanted to change my attitude, how I reacted, and my thought process. And that is how I came to realize that, okay, if I don't deal with this, I will always think like that. For example,
Yeah.
rejection. When my parents got divorced, I stayed with my dad, but they let us choose who we wanted to stay with. Now, as a 6-year-old child, I chose the best thing for me to stay with my
Right.
back then favorite sister. But when I was going through my healing, I found myself calling my mom and said, "Why didn't you choose me?"
Mhm.
And to her, it wasn't even choose you or not. It was at that time, it was the best she knew. And she thought by giving us a choice, she was doing the best thing or they were doing the best thing. But for me, it implanted rejection in me because it made me think that, oh, my mom didn't want me. But she gave me a choice and I took it.
Right. I have to say that rejection is also has been a big thing for me. From my side, it's a bit different. I'll tell you in a minute. I was actually more interested about how did you see that rejection trauma, if I may call it that? How did you
Uh-huh.
see that reflected in your relationships as an adult?
I was always on guard, never letting myself go. And it is something I still struggle with, never letting myself go completely in love because you might wake up someday and not want me anymore. Because for me, that is what the divorce was. We were a happy family. I always saw my parents very, very happy. And then just one day it changed. So it always stayed with me that people love you until they don't and then they just stop. But now
Right.
that I'm older, I'm an adult, I know that relationships don't work like that, especially a divorce. Before you get divorced, things were happening, and as a child, you don't know. But that is one of the ways I saw it coming up in my relationships. Always on guard, never committing fully, even though I didn't cheat. But it was always like, let me, look around because you don't know when this person will just stop loving me. Let me not love too hard.
Yeah.
Also with friends, I was very, okay, this is just how I am, you accept it or not. I'm not willing to look, how you see life. I mean, you experienced this with me when I was unhealed and
Yes.
unevolved. Oh no, your thought is wrong, mine is right, this is the way I see it, this is the way I live. But it was just because I didn't really want to open up completely to people and let them in, because what if one day they stop choosing me?
And how do you experience that in current day time? Do you let yourself be a bit more open and
A bit, but not completely, because aside from childhood trauma, you have grown up trauma, But it's something that I'm working on in my relationship right now. Very hard with myself to let that fear go. I'm still not there. I still think that, oh, maybe one day this person will stop choosing me, but it's less. I can recognize it now and realize, okay, it's just a thought, it's just a feeling. Sit with it and let it go.
right?
So I'm not completely over it, but it doesn't govern me like it used to.
I feel you. I feel you. I think I'm also at somewhere around those lines as well. And what are some of the things that um, kind of like affirmations that you use? Because I find that helps me at least, when it comes to rejection. My affirmation has become, as long as I don't reject myself, because that, as they say, the longest or relationship you will ever have is with yourself. It's you will always be there until you're not, but
Yeah.
you will always be there with yourself. um, so I've made it very important for me not to reject myself, because what I found is we had kind of the opposite. You would be like, this is me, accept me, or like, I mean, I had that as well, but somewhere along the lines, I became very much okay, uh,
Complacent.
complicit. Like, okay, they're rejecting this part of me, so let me also reject it and behave in a different way, so that
Mhm.
they accept me. And I did this during like my 5 year relationship. In the beginning, I was still very like bored, but at a certain point, you're tired. In five fucking years, to each time have to be like, no, like, oh my
You
god.
know, I read somewhere authenticity has the same effect as an alarm clock.
Hmm.
It's very loud and you need to deal with it. At some point, you have to be authentic to yourself. You can't fake it very long. That's
Yeah,
why relationships that start out and people are not really themselves or don't know themselves and what they want and what they accept and what they don't, at some point either you deal with it or it ends, because you
right.
don't stick it out long. You
Hmm.
can't you can't live for somebody else very long.
Exactly. Yeah.
It
And
knocks at your door.
yeah, like afterwards, for me, the healing, I was thinking, why? Why wasn't like the way you knew me in teenage years? You
Mm.
told me, I famously remember I did a presentation on 80s music in English class, and you were like, I don't like your music.
I
And
was so mean, girl. Stop.
yeah, I was like, I don't like your music. And what happened is, after that 5 year relationship, that, as you said, I became so complicit. I just wondered, where did that girl go that would, all
Yeah,
that
because
time?
even though you were like complacent or whatever, you had a very strong character. Like I remember very clearly, we were going somewhere, and I'm like, "Girl, you wearing flip flops?" You're like, "Yes, I'm wearing my reefs." That's it. So
Yeah.
that is also a part of you that I knew very like a very strong backbone.
Yeah. And I somewhere along the line, the backbone dissolved. And after my relationship, after I was so extremely complicit that I lost myself completely, I didn't recognize myself. At the end of that, that person, the backbone came back, and it was like, why? Why did I dissolve to at the end still get rejected?
Yeah.
So, to make a long story short, I think that's why my affirmations now is as long as I don't reject myself, it's
Yeah.
completely fine, and it's been helping me get through things much better. But my question before all of this was, what are your affirmations to?
For rejection, I don't have affirmation. It doesn't affect me that much. What I do is I recognize the thought and the feeling. That's how I deal with it. My affirmation in general is thank you. Every morning, every day, every situation, I just say thank you to the deity, the higher up. I just say thank you for it. But regarding how when I feel rejected or what I feel when I feel something, I just recognize that it is a feeling, and it is actually an anxiety exercise that teaches you three things. One thing you can see, something you can feel, something you can smell. And that's what I do with myself when I start feeling like, oh my god, Radinka thinks and she's gonna reject me. I'm just gonna be like, okay, what is real? What can you see? What can you feel? What can you smell? This is real. Did she really look at you crazy, or are you driving yourself crazy? So I just sit
Ah,
with myself. That helps me.
you mentioned a very important point, which is driving yourself crazy. I think a lot of times it leads back to this with many traumas, yeah, just not only rejection trauma, but just in general. You start kind of second doubting yourself. And
Mhm.
I notice I have that sometimes when someone doesn't answer me right away. I'm like, did I say something wrong? Did I offend them in any way? And they might just be busy. Maybe they're shitting or something, you know? Who knows? But yeah,
Yeah.
you do
You know
end up.
what I've learned along the way is what people do, how they react has everything to do with them. I don't take anybody's responsibility anymore. I'm very careful now how I approach and deal with people. But if my intention were pure and I meant it right, and if you feel offended and you don't tell me, that's your responsibility. If you tell me, I'm gonna, apologize, we're gonna talk about it. But I used to think for people. What did I do? What did I say? But maybe it's just you. I remember, a period in our relationship, you were going friendship. It is a relationship. You were going through something and then you just cut everybody off, or me anyways, just
Mhm.
cut off because you were dealing with yourself and whatever.
Yeah.
And those were the times I used to really think like, hey, what did I do? What happened? And one, I learned, okay, people do what's best for them. And the second thing I learned is to talk, because after a period of time that we talked, you told me what happened and we talked it out. And look at us now, girl.
Girl, on podcast and shit.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. So no, I would say that everybody who does that, to make sure that you're not taking somebody else's feeling and making them your own. Keep yours. Psychology teaches us that everybody has a garden. Don't pick things from people's gardens and put into yours. Your garden is yours. Theirs are theirs.
I feel you. I feel. I mean, I just as you're talking, I'm just seeing so many things that has indeed not only happened between us, but just in my own like life separate from this, and just different moments that I've had with people where I've came to basically the same conclusion. Yeah, like if you don't talk to me about it, then how do I know how you really
I don't
feel?
know.
I can like try to initiate the conversation, but if someone keeps blocking or doesn't want to show a more vulnerable part of themselves, then yeah, you can't really push that. And at the
No,
same time, setting boundaries
exactly.
is really important.
But I have a question, because we're
Mhm.
talking about healing today.
Yes.
How did you heal? Because healing for me was heavy. Hell, people talk about it like, oh, go through the healing
Yeah,
and
yeah,
ooh, like it's
yeah.
roses and butterflies. But girl, healing
Yeah.
was almost like I got drugged through hell,
That's really interesting because I did want to touch upon like the amount of energy it takes to heal, and it's
right?
exhausting. Like
Yeah.
and it's not linear. Like it's not like
No,
today I woke up and now like
I'm
trauma free.
healed.
I
No.
wish we all wish to some extent, but it's exhausting. I'm still healing. I mean,
Yeah.
I can't say I'm completely healed. I'm at the point, especially when it comes to just that, let's take just that 5-year relationship. I'm
Hmm.
at the point where I'm angry. And
Oh yeah.
I know that anger is predominantly with myself because there was a lot of verbal abuse, especially.
Hmm.
And a lot of times I would stay quiet or I would get emotional and start crying. And that should have been a red flag for me that it's not
Hmm.
okay what's
Hmm.
happening. First of all, second of all, you know, you always have this fight in your head afterwards when you feel like you didn't say what you wanted to say.
Hmm.
I have that, but it's super violent because at this
Yeah.
point, each time I have a flashback of her saying certain things, I just imagine pushing her from the balcony, choking
Yeah.
her, you know, like very violent because that's
Yeah.
the amount of anger that accumulated over 5 years. So I did go to therapy. I did
Hmm.
two therapy. Well, I did more than that. I had first someone that was helping me. She was a psychology student, and I mean, I really appreciate the time she gave and listened to me. But what I came to realize is that it wasn't really helping me. It's that type of therapy doesn't work for me, and
Okay.
I think that's a really important point because people say go to therapy, but it's important to know that not all kinds of therapy works for
Yeah.
everyone. Because I believe the way she was talking to me was also a reflection of how she saw me, which was very childlike and innocent and this and that.
Yeah.
And this is one of the things that came back later because we no longer speak to each other. And she's like, yeah,
Mm.
your energy seems so vulnerable, but there's something like a darkness about me. And I thought I
Oh.
never hide my darkness. I just told you I have fantasies of pushing someone off a balcony. How
Exactly.
darker can that get?
But that's
Uh,
also one of the stages of healing, you know?
yeah, but I ended up going to regression therapy,
Yeah.
and it's much more heavier in the sense
Yeah.
that I've to date I've only had 2 sessions,
Wow.
but the transformation after just one session is so incredible for me at least. You're semi hypnotized, kind of,
Yeah.
and you go into a situation, whatever comes up that your body wants to process, and you go into that situation. I started, for example, with, in a situation where I was 5 years old, and my mom threw me a surprise party. And for, I guess, most children, this will be a very joyous, happy occasion. And I was
Hmm.
happy to an extent, but I didn't like that the people, it wasn't like the people I wanted to spend my birthday
Your
with.
birthday. Yeah.
And I think I even mentioned that what I wanted to go swimming that day. But here I am, I'm stuck at home, I'm meeting people that I didn't care to see on my birthday. I'm
Yeah.
sorry to say. I'm very happy they came at the end of the day. You know, as an adult, I can say thank you for coming and everything.
Yeah.
But my childhood brain I wanted to do what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
And it's a recurring theme with me, that kind of power, fighting for my power, for my right to stand in my power, to say, I don't want this.
To make
Uh,
your choices and not have the choice be made for you.
exactly. And this is a recurring theme then. And then, you know, she talks to me, I have to change the situation in that um, kind of hypnotized state. I have to change
Mm.
what would I've rather done. What would I have done if I was my own mom?
Hmm.
And and if I would allow myself to make my own decisions, like these types of things, really changing that narrative from the seed
Yes.
where
So you
where
go back in the situation and you recreate it, and that's how
yes,
you feel.
yeah,
Yeah.
and then at the end she does kind of like pushing the energy out. Like she literally takes like a pillow, and I can like hit the pillow. I can push her away from me.
Girl,
Uh,
push that pillow off the balcony.
oh yeah. One of them was especially like having to do with like sexual abuse as well. So it happened on an occasion where I froze, and it's really working. Like, okay, if it's gonna happen again, push away right away, like so I wouldn't freeze should this, I mean, I hope it doesn't happen again, but should it
Yeah,
happen
of
again,
course.
I will definitely react differently because I wouldn't be frozen as such. I have like reflex, and she was testing me afterwards, like she would like just randomly walk up to me, and I would go like, what are you doing? And she's like, good,
Mhm.
I already started pushing her away from me, like, what, why are you in my space?
Yeah,
But yeah, but it's heavy and it's intense, and I was like, I was slightly skeptical at first because I was like, you gotta put me under hypnosis, like,
yeah.
blah,
Like,
blah.
okay.
Yeah, but it works, and I cried like a baby.
Yeah.
But yeah, it works, and also what we talk about is if that traumatic event didn't happen, if I think this later thing in the future, like say like the relationship, for example, if it would have happened like it did, and
Mhm.
definitely you can see the correlation that it would not have happened if I was from childhood, if I was stimulated, for example, to speak my mind more
Mm.
instead of no, you have to fall in line and follow the rules and please everyone. If that wasn't done in childhood, then probably that relationship wouldn't have even happened
Yeah.
because
You know,
from the
something
beginning.
that I also learned along with healing, especially regarding parents,
Hmm.
I have come to really understand that my parents are human.
Yeah.
And that has helped me tremendously because there were things that I'm like, how could you have not seen this or, dealt with it? Not abuse or anything, but I
Hmm.
remember being very young and I was like, I think I have a certain sickness. And they were like, no, 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 you're very young, you can't have that. And then later on it came out that yes, I do. It stuck with me for a while, but then I realized, no, if I have a child, now that I've been through it, I would be like, okay, you're 5 years old, let's test it out. But I can imagine as a parent, you're like, no, that it's
Hmm.
not malicious. And that has helped me
Hmm.
let go of so many things because they do what they can. And I'm just scared if I ever become a parent that I would think I'm doing great, but we all traumatize our children, girl. We all
Girl,
do.
that's part of the human experience as well.
Yes.
And I don't think they intentionally try to
No, no,
actively
no, I'm not saying with
traumatize.
your parents. I'm just saying in general, because once you
Yeah.
start going to therapy, you realize that a lot of things stem from childhood.
Yes.
And then before you realize that you have to take responsibility, whatever the age was, you start blaming people. Or for me, the
Yes.
start of my healing, I started blaming everybody except myself.
Hmm.
But then when you start taking responsibility for yourself, you can put everything in place.
That's where the magic happens, I say.
That's where the magic happens, my friend.
Yes.
Truly, truly.
No, but that's true. And as you said, they're humans, and even my therapist kept saying like this sense of not being enough or
Mhm.
not being worthy. There has to be someone in my family that I learned that behavior from.
Oh, okay.
Um, I mean, I don't know exactly who has it, or maybe both parents have it. But I mean, I completely understand. My parents are way older than the
Mhm.
conventional parents. I mean, nowadays it's more modern actually, because a lot of people are
Yes,
having children later, but for their age, having me later was like late, you know? Like,
yes, because back in the day, if you were 30, you had to already have it.
yeah. And I
But
mean,
now we're all having kids at 35, 37, even 40 and 50. So yeah.
yes, exactly. But and I mean, I understand that generational gap, the way of thinking is completely different. But also, my parents themselves, their story is in the sense that my mom lost her dad when she was two.
Mm.
Um, so there's definitely some things that she herself sits with. For example, my grandpa couldn't swim, yet he was in the Marines, and he went during a storm. He,
Wow.
he went up to a sail thing to fix it and fell in the water. So I do notice in my mom that she always had like, why you have children? You had like my aunt was freshly born back then,
Yeah.
so why would you go and put your life at such risk? So she always sat with that question: who was my dad? Why would he risk his life in such ways? Why would
Yeah.
he leave me behind? And my dad also had issues in the sense that his father died of, I think this was health complications. I don't know the
Hmm.
full story because he'd never like to talk about it much, even though I asked and asked. You know, I want to
Yeah.
know who's my grandpa. But it was recently that I found out it was like health issues. And then he became the man of the house. And that also did something with him because he
Of
got up
course.
to, let's say, he didn't make it to high school,
Yeah.
and he's a brilliant man if you got
Yeah.
like if he actually opens up to you and talks to you, right?
Yeah. I think I've known
Be-
your dad for more than 10 years. I've never said more than hello. Wait, Radinka's coming.
yeah, yeah. Imagine being the daughter and never to the date actually having had a proper conversation
Wow.
with my father. Like I can't recall having a proper conversation with him, and
Do you
this
think that affects you in your communication? Because I think I am very good at, or good at least, I find it easy because I did always have that open line of communication with my parents. And even when I called my mom during my healing period to tell her that it was, we could have that conversation. With my dad it's easier because he is a communicative person. But
yes.
yeah, girl, but do you think that affects you? I find it easy to communicate my feelings and say what I feel, what I think, because I mean I could do it at home. You would have to be respectful, but I could do it. My anxiety now comes from not saying too much or realizing that, oh, not everybody is as open. So it's the other way around.
Right.
But I just feel like I need to think how and when I say things. You can't just blah 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 blah. But you that
Exactly.
weren't able, to have the communication, do you feel that it affects you?
Yes, because what you're now having to do, which I call my filter, you're having to build that filter for yourself
Yeah,
now as an adult, whereas for me, it's been a learned behavior just to survive
you
within my
filter
household.
everything.
Yes, I filter everything because I couldn't say everything I wanted to say. If I said, like, for example, one of the things about gay marriage was like big no taboo within
Uh-huh.
our household or just being gay in general, and which ironically made me more curious, but that's a story for later. But because it was like as soon as something on TV was like gay people can get married, for example, the whole house would be like, oh, but no, and you and this and that. And I couldn't understand why they would have such an adverse reaction to just people loving each other. It's none of your
Yeah,
business. It's not affecting you financially. They're not feeding you, you know. I couldn't
yeah,
understand any of these things. And a lot of times I would be then the only one in the family wanting to defend those gay people on
yeah,
TV that are just getting married. And that made me filter myself. I would rather not say anything. If you know me from the past, this is primarily why I'm quiet. It's not because I
Yeah.
don't have an opinion,
You
but I
do,
think
girl.
I have a pretty strong opinion, in fact.
Pretty
Um,
strong.
but I've learned to filter myself not only in communication, but in also I filter my ego. I have a pretty fucking big ego, to be honest. But I've learned to filter everything just to survive.
It's so funny. It's so funny that you say that because I am learning to filter to survive. Because, for example, at home, even if I was the only one who had an opinion, we would like having discussions, like healthy discussions. So bring
Mhm.
your point up, and it will be a discussion. And now I'm learning that not everybody sees that as just a discussion. They might take it as your real opinion, or that you think like that, or that you are like that. But we would just have ponencias. How do you
Yeah,
say that, girl?
I think you mean like a debate.
Yeah, we would have debates, and it doesn't really have to be your real opinion, but let's just debate that black is not black. And
Yeah.
I would go in, and now I have that so strongly. Like, even if it's not my opinion, for example, gay marriage, even if I'm
Mhm.
not, I would go through that debate as if I'm trying to marry the gayest gay in life. So it's funny that you say that you're learning to unfilter, and I'm learning to filter.
Yeah. And it goes back to balance, right?
Yeah,
Because
everything is a balance.
yeah, it's very important. I'm finding, but it's I mean, as you said, we all get traumatized, and we're gonna have to. That's I think part of the maturity that you have to learn to balance your, let's call them shortcomings, in a sense.
And just your lessons in life, because we all have a lesson. Some people, their lesson is in relationships, some it's in their career. We all have to learn our lessons. I think my life lesson is in relationships, with just relationships in general, friends and romantic relationships. Because when see my biggest struggles in life, they come down to relationship. And the better I get at relationships, friendship wise, boundaries, love, um, the easier life gets. But it came with healing.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, for me, I mean, I also have that relationship component, but I think a lot of it has to do with myself, and as I said, my power. Sometimes wanting to control things too much, or I just let loose of control and don't control at all. So I'm really finding that balance, and for me, in finding that balance, things are flowing now. Like I'm learning my boundaries, saying no. I
Yeah,
People love to push my boundaries for some reason, and I don't get it. I'm like, you get my nice version, be happy, because my my angry version or not so nice version is as extreme as I am extremely nice. So
yeah, true.
why do you want to fuck around and find out? You know, like,
Don't test me.
don't test me exactly. So yeah, to I wanted to ask, did you do some kind of therapy?
Um, yes, but my biggest therapy came from myself.
Mhm.
I I have a very strong internal power. The other side of that is I'm very, very, very emotional, but I have a very strong internal power. I went through therapy for some things, but to really heal myself, to dig deep, I isolated myself. My therapy was crying, crying. Girl, I cried so much. I didn't used to cry like that. I cried so much. I started writing. Meditation helped me. It doesn't help everybody, but it helped me to just sit quiet with my thoughts. And it's kind of like how you explained regression therapy.
Yeah.
When I'm sitting there quiet, I would go back in certain moments, and I didn't used to deal with them, so they stuck.
Mhm.
And going through the healing, through the meditation, I used to go back in a moment and see it for what it was. I didn't change it. I just heard that, but I would just see it and accept it. My
Yeah.
healing came a lot from just acceptance, because it is what it is. And it sounds very cold, and I come off very cold, but it's not. It's the reality. It is what it is. I can't
Hmm. I
I
completely
can't
understand.
change it, you know?
Yeah.
And a lot of my healing was me, and as I said, taking responsibility for failed relationship, for especially that, you know,
Mhm.
and just life and in work where I could have said things better, how I should have done it, and just looking at myself. Okay, what would I have liked? How would I have liked somebody to talk to me or to say that or to express that? But I'm digressing. To go to the point,
It's fine.
it was a lot of looking internal, accepting and letting go. And I'm still letting go. Some days I still want to throw people off the balcony, girl. Well, not like that. I don't imagine balcony. You know, I'm a car silly. Okay, but I can.
The thing is,
No,
I have
some
a
days
balcony here, so that's easy then.
it's that's why I do it in my car. But girl, no, it's still it's still things. But my healing was a lot of crying. I never thought I could cry that much. I cried my soul up. Some days I cried as if my mother had died. That
Mhm.
was how deep, because things from years and years and years ago that I never dealt with. I used to joke about everything. I still joke about everything. It's my defense and coping mechanism. But I really used to joke about them and bury them deep.
Yeah.
So once I stopped joking about them and really realizing that hey, this hurts you, this did something to you, I cried and I wrote and I read books. I read a book twice and just sitting with myself.
I have a signed book for you here, by the way. I'm
By
waiting.
the way, yes, I'm still waiting. I will send you my address. I'm still waiting for my signed book. Please and
Yes.
thank you.
Yes.
No,
It's
but
here.
that helped me. That really helped me. And the hardest part was telling people, talking to people,
Yeah.
calling them up and being like, hey, this, you did this, and it affected me. Things that I would have never said. For example, the conversation with my mom, I always kept that with me because I didn't want her to feel bad. I know she didn't mean anything with it, but it doesn't really matter what she meant. That's what it did to me. And by hearing my mom said, I'm so sorry, it was never my intention. I did the best that I knew then. It just,
That's why
it,
I love your parents, by the way, because they're so communicative, and their reaction. Like not all parents, because a lot of parents will see it as an attack, like you're attacking.
I was
Um,
afraid,
yeah, but
but no, no, in this, no. Yeah, we have to talk about things. And so
yeah,
that was the hardest part, telling people stuff. I'm still not done. There's something that I need to deal with that I don't want to look this person up because it really did something with me. I'm still thinking and hoping I can handle it and deal with it by myself. But that really helped.
yeah. I feel you. I had the again the opposite, right? Because I would cry too much, and that's when at a certain point I got so tired of crying, and then that's where I literally sent that therapist the message. I was like, I'm done with this
Yeah.
shit. Please help me. And she helped. She made an appointment for me like within a week, um, and we started. I have to message her again. By the way, I promised like in January checkup, but we're already February, and I'm like, no, why is the time flying?
You know what I found was a hard thing? Decisions that you made that hurt you.
Hmm.
I made a decision that cost me a lot of pain, but it was my decision. And then how do you forgive yourself? Because
Right.
when we talk about healing, we usually think, other people, what other people did to you. But you do things to yourself too. And it was very hard to forgive myself. I still haven't really forgive myself completely. But I'm every day realizing that it was my choice and that was the consequence of my choice. But then you feel kind of conflicted because you feel as if this shouldn't hurt because I made the choice,
Hmm.
but it still hurts.
Of
And it's
course.
okay to
Yeah.
realize that, to acknowledge that, hey, I made this decision. It was right for me then, but it hurts.
Hmm. I mean, to live without risk is to risk not living, right? So
Girl,
we're always taking risks,
write that book
right?
again.
Yeah, that one's actually written here on my shoulder.
Oh, you
But
got more tattoos. Okay.
no, this is an old one. This is like 10 years old already.
You know which one I really love? The one at your feet. Look up, princess. Your crown is falling, right? Chin up,
It's
princess. Your crown is falling.
yeah, a chin hop. Wait, now I have to look at it. It says chin high, puffed chest, pursue it.
Yeah, it's very nice.
Yeah, I love it. I love that also that it's. I love the fact that it's on the feet. That when
It's
I look
really
down,
on your feet. I don't know how you could
yeah,
have handled that pain.
that's the point I didn't like. getting it
But that's a
getting it
different
on the
podcast.
feet. Yeah, it's a different day for Poison Honey when we're talking about tattoos and the face. Uh, yeah, I mean we're talking about the human experience, and tattoos are
Yeah,
also that. But yeah, so it's really interesting to see the similarities in our healing process, but also the oppositions. It comes down to the same thing basically, but we're like at the other
different
end of the
spectrums.
spectrums exactly.
Hmm.
But yeah, I resonate a lot in what you're saying, and also the experience you went through. That was a really nice and interesting look into trauma. I think it's something that we can even go further into another time because otherwise we'll be talking like 2 hours about trauma and healing.
About trauma, girl, we can talk weeks about trauma.
You know,
Stop.
but yeah, I mean, I would love to have you another time on the Poison Honey podcast.
Thank you for having
And
me on your first podcast. I am
yeah,
so honored, girl.
I hope I did a good job as a host and interviewer.
We will talk afterwards, but yes. No,
um,
I'm very, very proud of you. You know that, like your growth, for the people who don't know, your growth is amazing. Your posts, you're belly dancing now on Instagram. I'm
Girl,
like,
yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Like you do the meditation for healing, but just dancing for me has been extremely healing, and especially because I had several traumas related to dancing. Um,
okay.
so just the first step, just deciding, okay, I do like belly dancing, and I started in my teenage years already. My mom didn't like it. Because it's of the devil and and everything.
That's another thing, growing up in the church, but that's
Oh
another
God,
podcast.
that's a different day. Am I write it down? Growing up in the church. Oh my God.
Yes.
But
I want to say to everybody who um, is going through healing or who feels like, why do I need to heal? Do it. It's hell. It's heavy, but the other side of it is you. The hardest thing is, I'm going to say this in Dutch, jezelf tegenkomen. Maar je moet jezelf tegenkomen. Echt jezelf gewoon aankijken. Otherwise, you will always be stuck at a point where you got hurt.
mhm.
And it's not philosophical, it's just
No, it's
experience.
reality, and I'm gonna
It's reality.
translate
Kom
what
jezelf
she
eens
said.
tegen.
She said you have to encounter yourself. You have to look at yourself, quote unquote, in the mirror, and or your reflection, and you have to um, calm yourself. Yeah, how do you explain
You
calm
can't
yourself?
translate that, man. That's such a
You
good Dutch
you have
saying.
to
You can't really
encounter
translate it.
yourself. I'm gonna keep it to that. Encounter yourself. Come
Yeah, keep
face
it
to
to that.
face with yourself. Yeah. But that's actually good because I was gonna ask you what do you want to close off with, but that was a
That's what I want
beautiful.
to close off with.
That's a
Sit
beautiful
with
closing
yourself,
off.
deal with yourself. It'll make you better. Not just a better person, but it'll make you better internally.
Yeah, I completely agree. I sign off on that message. And on that note, that concludes the first episode of the Poison Honey podcast. Thank you for so much for listening to us talk about our experiences with trauma and healing. And um, until next time on the Poison Honey podcast. Bye bye.
Bye.